Olivia, a successful manager constantly juggling emails, deadlines, and back-to-back meetings, thought that morning would be just like any other. Latte in hand, walking briskly, she had no time for anything but work. But just seconds later, an unexpected collision, a splash of hot coffee, and the panicked eyes of a young boy brought her entire world to a halt. She didn't know that in that single moment, everything about how she saw life would change forever. Olivia never thought of herself as cold, just busy. As a project manager at a fast-growing tech startup in Chicago, she was used to starting her day with a flood of Slack notifications, an overflowing inbox, and a back-to-back lineup of meetings. Her life was run on a tightly packed schedule, everything planned down to the minute. Even her mornings had to be efficient, up at 6 a.m., checking emails while brushing her teeth, running on the treadmill with a business podcast in her ears, then swinging by her favorite coffee shop for her usual latte. That morning was no different. Her smartwatch buzzed gently, reminding her she had 14 minutes until her first meeting. Olivia had just stepped out of the cafe, having paid with Apple Pay without so much as glancing at the barista. She turned onto a narrow side street near Central Park, a shortcut she often took to get to the office faster. One AirPod in, latte in hand, her mind was deep in analysis mode, reviewing a financial chart her team had sent the night before. Eyes locked on her phone screen, she barely registered the small crowd up ahead, or the distant, uncertain voice calling out to someone. Then it happened. A sudden collision. Her latte flew from her hand. The lid popped off. Hot coffee splattered all over her freshly laundered white blouse. Olivia froze, heart pounding from the shock and stinging pain. She looked down and saw a thin boy, maybe 10 years old, staring up at her with wide, frightened, confused eyes. He was panting, one hand raised as if trying to signal something, but no words came out. Olivia reacted instantly. "What the hell are you doing? Look at this coffee. Do you even know how much this shirt costs?" Her voice was sharp, her anger unfiltered. The boy stepped back, but didn't run. That surprised her. Most people would walk away after causing a mess like that. But this boy, he was trying to say something. And his eyes, they weren't the eyes of a mischievous kid. There was something else there, something urgent. Olivia had no idea that within the next few seconds, everything she thought she knew about what mattered was about to be turned completely upside down. Olivia stood frozen on the sidewalk, coffee dripping down to her shoes, her wrist still stinging from the burn. She looked at the boy with irritation, about to unleash another round of scolding, when suddenly, he blurted out in a panicked voice, "I'm sorry. But, my mom, she passed out." At first, Olivia thought she'd misheard him. Her mind was still spinning with anger and confusion. But when she looked again, really looked, she saw how the boy was trembling, his eyes wide with something that looked like desperation. "What?" Olivia asked, her tone softening slightly, though doubt still lingered in her voice. The boy didn't answer. He simply turned and tugged at her hand. "Please, please come with me." Driven by instinct more than intent, Olivia followed him toward the corner of the park, where a middle-aged woman lay slumped next to a wheelchair, her head tilted to one side, her face pale, her breathing labored. A small shopping bag had toppled over beside her, scattering several pill bottles across the pavement. A few passers-by glanced over, then quickly looked away and kept walking, just like Olivia so often did. I called out. I shouted, the boy whispered. No one stopped. I didn't know what else to do. I just needed someone to see my mom. Olivia felt a tightness grip her chest. She knelt down beside the woman, her hands still trembling as she gently placed one on the woman's shoulder. Ma'am, can you hear me? No clear response, but she was still breathing, faintly. Olivia quickly pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Hi, I'm near Southwood Park. There's a woman here who's unconscious and needs immediate medical help. Her young son is with her. As they waited for the ambulance, Olivia took off her outer jacket, now stained with coffee, and draped it over the woman to keep her warm. The boy sat beside her, clutching his mother's hand, silent now, tears streaming down his cheeks. Olivia didn't know what else to do, except stay. And for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about emails, spreadsheets, or the 9 a.m. meeting. She was thinking only about this small boy who had to resort to something so desperate, just to make someone stop and listen. Her latte cup lay abandoned on the curb, suddenly seeming so small compared to everything else happening now. Time seemed to freeze in the strange quiet of the morning. Only the distant sound of car horns and the faint breaths of the unconscious woman remained. Olivia looked around. People were still passing by in steady streams, but no one stopped, no one asked. Suddenly, everything looked different. This wasn't just a kid messing around and spilling her coffee. It was a cry for help, lost in the noise of a city too busy to listen. She sat down next to the boy, her expression softening. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Ethan," he replied, his voice hoarse with emotion. "My mom has diabetes. If she doesn't eat on time or gets too tired, she can pass out like this. I usually know what to do, but this time I couldn't. Her wheelchair got stuck. I couldn't pull her into the shade. I called out to people, but no one stopped. Everyone was in a hurry." Ethan clenched his small fists. He looked at Olivia with eyes she knew she would never forget, eyes of a child far too young to carry such a heavy burden, doing everything he could just to keep the only person he had left. "I saw you walking by. I know I shouldn't have done that, but I didn't know what else to do," Ethan murmured, tears spilling down his cheeks. "I didn't want to hurt you. If I didn't do something, my mom might have." Olivia felt her throat tighten. Watching this child try so hard not to break down, she realized something inside her had been quietly pulled apart. It was as if she'd been yanked out of her invisible comfort zone, a world where meetings, KPIs, and deadlines always took priority over the real people out there. She suddenly remembered being like Ethan once, struggling with things too big for her. But unlike Ethan, she'd had someone to lean on. This boy had no one. Just himself. "You did the right thing," Olivia said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry I yelled at you. I should have looked closer, listened sooner." Ethan looked up, surprised, then gave a small, quiet nod. The sound of an approaching ambulance siren echoed down the street, pulling Olivia back to the present. But something in her had shifted, and she knew she would never be the same Olivia again. In a world where everyone's in a rush, a child had to risk everything just to make an adult stop and pay attention. And heartbreakingly, it worked. The ambulance pulled up to the curb with its siren wailing, red and blue lights flashing off the glass of nearby buildings. 2 paramedics jumped out, carrying a stretcher and emergency equipment. Olivia immediately stood up, pointing toward the woman lying motionless on the ground. "She's diabetic, could be hypoglycemia." "The boy is her son," he tried to get help, but no one stopped. Ethan stepped back slightly as the paramedics began tending to his mother, but Olivia took his hand and held it tight. His fingers were ice cold. "She's going to be okay, Ethan," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart still ached from the scene unfolding before her. One of the paramedics turned to her. "Good thing you called when you did. Her blood pressure and sugar levels are low, but we can stabilize her. She'll need to be monitored at the hospital for a while." As they lifted the stretcher into the ambulance, Ethan hesitated, looking back at Olivia, his eyes full of confusion. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." "Go with your mom," Olivia said gently. "I'll call the hospital, help you get in touch with family if you need." Ethan nodded and climbed into the ambulance, still visibly shaken. As the doors closed and the vehicle pulled away, Olivia remained standing, as if something deeper than emotion was anchoring her in place. Her hand was still sticky with coffee, her hair messy from the wind, and her expensive blouse beyond saving. But for the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt lighter. It was right there on a crowded, noisy street that Olivia woke up from the life she once believed was ideal. Every day, she moved fast, too fast to see what was happening right in front of her. She had always been the type to be busy working, busy succeeding, busy believing she didn't have time to stop. And yet, it had taken one single act, a coffee-splashed brick through the window, to bring everything to a sudden halt. For the first time in years, Olivia wondered, how many times had she walked past someone who needed help? How often had she looked up too late? She turned to glance back down the street she had just walked. Everything looked the same, but she was not. She pulled out her phone and canceled her 9 a.m. meeting. Then she stood still for a few moments, just to breathe. No rushing. No checking emails. No planning. Just being there, in that exact moment. It was the first step in a change Olivia didn't yet have a name for. But she knew it had started with something incredibly small, a boy, a mother, and a world too used to passing each other by. A week later, Olivia stood in her laundry room, holding the white blouse that had been thoroughly cleaned. No more coffee stains, no more marks, everything looked perfect, as if nothing had ever happened. But she didn't feel relieved or satisfied. Instead, she felt empty. She hung the shirt back in her closet, but for the first time in years, she didn't choose it for Monday morning's meeting. Since that day, Olivia had started to change, not abruptly, not dramatically, but little by little, like someone slowly adjusting the speed of their life. She began setting aside 10 minutes each morning to do nothing but look out the window. She turned off her phone notifications after 7 p.m. And more importantly, she started noticing the people around her, from the doorman and the cashier, to strangers passing by on the street. Ethan and his mother, Angela, were both recovering well. Olivia visited them once at the hospital, one late afternoon after work. They were surprised to see her, but genuinely happy. Ethan ran up to hug her, shy but warm. She didn't say much, just handed him a children's book and a small card that read, "Thank you for waking me up." Angela took Olivia's hand, eyes misty. "You have no idea how much you saved us." But Olivia shook her head gently, squeezing her hand. "No, you saved me." A few days later, when she returned to her usual coffee shop, Olivia sat down at a table instead of rushing out with her drink. She looked the barista in the eye and said, "Thank you," something she rarely remembered to do before. She didn't check her email while waiting. She just watched. A mother tying her child's shoelace. An elderly man laughing at a tiny dog wagging its tail. Things she used to dismiss as unimportant. And then she understood. Life isn't about what you achieve, it's about what you feel. It's about knowing when to pause, when to listen, and how to truly be present in the moment. That day, Olivia wrote a small note and stuck it to the bottom edge of her laptop screen, just beneath the webcam. It said only one thing. Don't wait for someone to throw a brick to make you pay attention. The white blouse still hung quietly in her closet. She hadn't worn it again, not because it was ruined, but because it reminded her of something much bigger. That in one messy, chaotic, coffee-soaked moment, she had found her way back to herself. And sometimes, that journey begins simply by stopping long enough to really listen.